company called Bradley, the brand agency, and we've been working with food brands for over 30 years now to help them find their space. So we thought it would be nice today to have a chat with some entrepreneurs who are building businesses and talk about why brand's important to them. What's common amongst all three of our guests, so I'm going to get them to introduce themselves in a second, is they've all gave up a corporate or a bigger business to come in and start their own business. And I think that tells a lot, that you walk away from something to start your own thing. And so I'm going to start, first of all, with Lily. You might just introduce yourself, please, Lily.
So good morning, afternoon already. My name is Lily Ramirez-Foran. I'm originally from Mexico, but I've been living in Ireland for 23 years now. Next year, I'm going to be living here longer than I ever lived in Mexico, which
Fantastic.
is really scary to think. I'm married to a dove for my sins, and for the first, probably 3 months of my life in Ireland, I was, really excited. I love meat, 3 veg, potatoes rule, and then month 4, I start getting the shakes for the salsa. And it's easy for us to think about it now, but 23 years ago, you could not find a chili for your life.
Okay.
There was no beans, no tortillas. It was like the desert of culinary. It was my culinary nightmare, right? So I kind of realized that I was getting really homesick. And I had lived abroad before, and I couldn't understand what it was. And eventually it kind of dawned on me that it was to do with food. I needed to eat Mexican food to kind of keep connected to who I was.
Okay,
and
so that was
sort
your
of my
motivation.
roots. So that was a motivation. I spent probably 4 or 5 years very angry writing a blog that was very whingy.
Yeah.
And he's still my husband.
Yeah.
Alan kind of turned around and said, why don't you just stop whinging and do something about it? And I went, do you know what, you're right.
I must try that line myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good line to have.
You're right.
Yeah.
Feck it. I'm going to start my own business. And now we're, 12 years on. And I wouldn't change it for the world. I get to eat Mexican food every day.
Where's your business today? What are you at today?
We have we started online, but we now have a physical shop in Portobello. We have a cookery school and a grocery shop, and we do a lot of corporates, and we're actually about to, and I want to cross every finger and every toe, because it's been a 3-year-long road, but we're about to open a second location with a very exciting
so living the dream.
addition. Living the dream.
Very good.
Like losing sleep and being terrified of opening another business.
Can I ask you to pass the mic over to Dee Schroeder?
Yeah.
Dee, would you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, hi, I'm Dee Schroeder. I am co-founder of Brew, so we make functional cold brew coffee drinks, and you're probably thinking, okay, what's functional? Basically, they're plant-based, they're healthy, they're fortified with added vitamins and gut-friendly agave. So the idea is that it's like a healthy frappuccino, and we founded the business, we moved back from the States about 3 years ago, and cold brew is a huge category there already, and it's one of the fastest growing drinks categories here. So it's going to grow more than soft drinks and everything else in the next 5 years. So we sell in super values, Centras, fresh markets. We just got our first export listing with Selfridges in the UK, so that's exciting. And we were just a finalist in the World Coffee Innovation Awards as well.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And you also have a partner who's in the sidelines.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's not here today because he's fighting fires in the background, but yeah, Jeff does all the finance and operations, and I get to do the fun stuff like
Very
this.
good.
Yeah.
You've got that well balanced.
Yeah.
Felix, can you introduce yourself, please? Sorry, excuse me, we're mic down here.
All right, so thank you. My name is Felix. I'm the founder of More Taste Jams and Spreads. And the history is basically exactly as you said, that I have work experience, or I used to work for Kellogg's before. I used to manage the European innovation strategy for Kellogg's, and I was working in retail before. But I was kind of frustrated with the way that these big manufacturers and retailers work, being focused on profit much more than for health and creating healthy products that are actually good for you. So, and the story is very quickly that my doctor told me to eat less sugar a few years ago, and I was always liked eating jams and spreads. Like that was just a product I liked, and I couldn't find any products in store that were actually low sugar, and just like a very simple product, more fruit, less sugar. So I started experimenting myself. Then you obviously helped me with getting the brand right. And finally, I really started selling the products back in January this year. And since then, now they're available in Super Value stores, they're available in Aldi stores across Ireland. So within like just a few months, 3/4 of a year, I went from home production only to being in national distribution, which is fantastic.
And frightening.
Exactly, yeah.
Very good.
It is, yeah.
Nicole, introduce yourself, please.
I think this is working now. So I'm Nicole Kirwan, so I work with Andrew and the rest of the team at Bradley as a brand consulting executive, so we do some brand strategy. I've had the pleasure of working with Felix on his brand as well, and I know that Bradley has worked with Good Brew too, but I was actually introduced to Lily at a Dublin food chain event, and really was taken by her story as well, so I'm really glad that we could have this whole panel for you guys to hear their story today. But yeah,
Tell them what your role is, what you're good at.
What I'm good at. What am I not good at, Andrew? So we work with brands. We really get to the bottom of what they do, their brand essence, what really drives them. But apart from that, I also do a lot on the writing side. I'm really getting a brand's message across. So I believe we did some good work with More Taste on naming the brand. But also doing the messaging to make sure that we get to communicate the brand benefits across our brand touch points.
Thank you. So 2 things to take away to start with. The story and the language is as important as the whole design and presentation. And we think about brand, we think about design first a lot of the time, but actually it's the story is very important. And the second thing to take away is you need to be slightly mad to start a business. So all of you guys, I can confess, are slightly mad, and we love that about you. And we're all slightly mad. Dee, I want to start with you because to take on the coffee sector, which potentially is one of the biggest food sectors, not globally, and to say, yeah, I can find a niche here. What was it that motivated you to do that, and what did you think you could bring that was different?
Well, I think first of all, we didn't realize the size of the challenge we were taking on, which I think is probably something that most entrepreneurs have in common.
Are you saying if you didn't know, you mightn't have done it?
I'm not quite saying that,
okay,
but
good,
I have my moments. No.
Yeah.
I think for our particular type of product, it's a really exciting time because the scale of the opportunity is absolutely huge. The gap is huge. It's kind of up for the taking. The huge challenge comes from that you're up against absolutely massive whopper brands, right? So Starbucks and Costa and, to a lesser extent, Califia now, which doesn't quite have the same brand recognition, but has a huge global distribution and, a lot of money behind it. So it's not really a space that small brands are competing in generally. So that's opportunity, but it's also challenge. And, I think one of the things coming into it is that we didn't want to look like Starbucks and Costa, and a lot of, like, when you think of coffee, you think of creams and caramels, and all of that is really like easily identified as coffee, and we didn't want to look like that, and that was the one one of the things that we said to Bradley, and I think you guys achieved that. We're actually going through a slight brand refresh at the moment, but keeping with you guys. The vibrant blue was one of the things that's been really positive about our brand and really different. So I think it's going to help us stand out.
Did you have to find you were selling cold brew coffee first? Sorry, cold coffee first, and then your company, then the brand?
That's a really interesting question, right? So our target consumer now is really very much 18 to 25, right? So they're really young. With that consumer, you don't have to sell cold coffee, right? They've grown up on cold coffee. I could throw out a host of stats and figures for you, but their consumption is huge, right? And in Ireland, it's that they just haven't had that many options. So for them, it's really about grabbing their attention and getting them to pick us over a different option and shouting out from the shelves and letting them know that this option is here, that there is a healthier option over the alternatives, the Starbucks or whatever on the shelf. There's an older consumer who buys us, who for sure we have to educate on cold coffee,
Okay.
and that's different. And it's really interesting. We actually just did the ploughing championships, right? Which is the biggest gathering of
good.
tea drinkers you're
Yes,
ever going to meet
yes.
in your life, right? So I feel like if you can sell cold coffee at the ploughing championships, you're onto something. But once we got that consumer to try the product, for the most part, they were really receptive. And like, honestly, you get a lot of like, ooh, cold coffee, it's like warm beer. No, I don't want to try it from that older consumer. So with them, there's an education piece. But with the younger consumer, and that's what we're kind of trying to capture in our brand refresh, is really, like, we've lots of lovely words
Okay.
on our label at the moment.
So be prepared to take on the education piece.
Yeah. And
You know.
take on the education piece, but know how your consumer is going to consume that,
Yes.
right? So the lovely language we have on the back of our package at the moment, we realize that 18 to 25-year-old, like, they're never going to read that, right?
Yeah.
Or if they do, it'll be way after
Yeah.
they bought the product. So it's like about how you educate them, right?
So just on language,
Yeah.
how important was that?
Oh, I think language is like critical, really, right? Like, and I think like authenticity in language and speaking to your consumer in a way that's like conversational and not like cheesy or condescending or trying to like be, you know, I'm always very conscious that like Jeff and I are not our target consumer. Like, we love our product, we drink iced coffee, but we're not, to surprise you, 18
Yes,
to 25, right? We're not. So, you know, I think that's why working with people like Bradley, where you know, you're in connection, you know, you have a broader spectrum of talent,
Yeah.
you can have more authentic language, is like really important, right?
Okay. Felix, you also chose to take on a huge sector. And what have you found in that challenge that you've learned about your product, your brand? I mean, you're a very analytical person. You analyze the market to death,
Exactly, yeah.
which is sometimes a good thing and a bad thing. But what was it that you kind of said, there's my gap?
Well, as you say, I think it's important, though, to have that understanding of consumers and of your shoppers, both consumers and shoppers. What might be the same person, it not necessarily is the same person. I would agree to like what Dee said. It's incredibly important to know the consumption occasion, to know what people are going to do with your product, how they consume it, where they consume it. But also like all the drivers behind the purchasing decision in store. If I looked at my category first, if you go into an average supermarket and you look at jam and spreads and marmalades, you probably find in average 80 different products.
18.
80.
It's a very
80.
crowded space.
It is a very crowded space, and that's a bit different to your category, where we find international brands such as Bon Maman. Then you find national brands like Foran would be a very good distributed national producer. But then you also have all these local manufacturers of like homemade jam and spreads. So it is very tricky to find your point of difference first, and you need to do all the analytics behind and understanding like your not only the consumers and shoppers but also your competitive set, who you're up against. But then what I found really helpful is like looking at my own consumption and my own driver behind creating the product first of all.
Okay.
Because I knew exactly that product doesn't exist yet. And there's a reason why I made it myself. If I could have bought the product myself, I would never have started to produce. Why? Like, what's the added value in producing something yourself if you can buy exactly the same product in a shop at a better price, probably? So I know...
You had no background in making things, had you?
No, not at all. And,
But even with that, with the new product, with the fact that it was such a crowded space, there was that education piece there. There was the fact that you had to make it easy to see on pack. Like you said, they're not going to read reams of lovely language, which is very nice. But how you choose that language and the way in which you put it on your pack was very important.
Exactly, and not only like it's not only the language itself. It starts with the brand name itself. Like what you need to do. If you imagine you stand in front of a supermarket shelf with 80 different products, how would you look and understand of all these added values and all the points of differentiation that these products actually want to communicate. And then you need to find a way how you can distinguish the messaging of your product versus everybody else. And all that needs to happen in that half a second that a shopper usually spends in store looking at a new product. And that's why the briefing that I gave to you was so exhaustive.
But also, to be more blunt, you have to convince the retailer, why do I take that off and put me in?
Exactly.
Because shop shelves aren't empty. Lily, you've been very much the master of your own destiny and journey. Where did brand on your journey become important to you?
I feel such a fraud because
Lily.
they took such big chunks of like huge challenges. There was nothing for me. I was riding the crest of the wave and actually creating the wave, which has its own challenges.
Lily, I've heard your story. You've had your challenges, don't you?
Yeah, but what I'm saying is there was no Mexican food market in Ireland when I started.
But that
when I was
makes it
competing with
even-
all El Paso.
Yeah, that makes it an even bigger education piece then. So that is a big feat in and of itself. So to brand that in a way and to use the language in a way that makes that accessible.
For us, very quickly, we had two big challenges. One was how do we educate people about Mexican food, because most food was all El Paso, the bane of my existence. They probably have a huge stand behind me, so I can't say much, but. So for us, education was a big thing. So I was adamant that we had to have an element within the business that was all about education. And at the beginning, my blog, because I'm a writer, you can notice because I'm a talker as well. So I write a lot, right?
That's your first love, writing?
Yes,
Okay,
yeah.
okay.
So I have a love for writing. So I had this massive amount of blog posts of 4 years that were kind of had been creating a demand for what I was selling. And then authenticity, totally. Like I was adamant when I sat with, we were very adamant that my expertise is cooking and writing. I know shit about anything else. And that's fine, right? Accepting that you need to hire smarter people for the things that you can't is rule number one in business, right? You're not going to succeed unless you surround yourself with people who know the part. So we saved quite a lot of money and we engaged a very young company at the time, and we sat with them and we went through. It was a very long, because I had all these ideas, wonderful ideas, again, not knowing anything. And we sat down and we knew we wanted to be the Avoca of Mexican food. That was my vision. It still is.
Okay.
Maybe not so much now with all the connotations, but we sat down with the company and we designed a strategy, and language was a huge thing.
And did it take you long to get to that point? We want to be the Avoca of Mexican food.
I knew from the word go.
Okay.
That was the briefing. They knew nothing else but.
Good.
So that encompassed no sombreros, no mariachis, no fake mustaches.
Yes.
Like, I don't need any of that to know that my food
And
is.
today then, what percentage of your customers are non-Mexican? Or non...
My market has never been the Mexican markets because the Mexican community is tiny in Ireland. So we were always going to go for the Irish market. So from the very first day we opened, we had the cooking school attached to it. So if you come in and you took a packet of tortillas, I would take you back into the kitchen and say, look, this is how you use them. This is how you heat them. This is all the things that makes.
So you're taking education to a whole new level, really.
Totally. I had to create.
Very hands-on.
I had to create my demand, and up to now, when you walk into the shop, it's like walking into someone's.
And did you realize when you set out, I'm going to become a chef, a teaching chef?
I think I knew.
Okay. You weren't afraid of it?
No.
So you've embraced that?
I think so, and I think that's the core of our business. You can go anywhere now and buy Mexican food.
Yeah.
You can buy ingredients in loads of different places. Even the big supermarkets have up on the bandwagon.
So how do you keep ahead of the curve? You know, what are you thinking about next to stay ahead?
So we're opening. I'm going completely native, and I come from a very long family of tortilla bakers by trade. My great-grandfather, my grandfather, my dad. I'm sort of the black sheep of the family because I don't make tortillas for a living. So I'm taking that a step further, and we're opening the first molino in Europe. So our new location is going to have a traditional Mexican molino. And a molino is like a traditional meal for corn. So we're ethically sourcing corn. We're making masa from scratch, which is the dough we make corn tortillas with. And we're going to do a whole lot of other things surrounded by masa. And all El Paso can kiss my behind now. It's going to take a long time for them to catch up to that.
How do you think about staying ahead? You know, I mean, obviously coffee is a lot of innovation, a lot going on. I don't want you to declare anything you're thinking about, but are you thinking about it? Do you think about it all the time?
Yeah, absolutely. For sure. We're always thinking, like, how can we make our product better? Like, what's the vision, kind of always working on product development in the background. And really that's, you know, I think that's the way you compete with these big brands. And, you know, we have people say to us sometimes, well, like, what's to stop, you know, Starbucks doing what you're doing or whatever? And that's like, there's some truth in that. But the thing is like, they don't, because they're a big, massive, kind of clunky company, and they're doing well and they move slower. So we have to be ahead of the game, both in terms of like ingredient profile and also like consumption moments and branding and what the customer wants as well. So that's why I think the brand is.
So the lesson there is, as soon as you start thinking of the next product.
Yeah, 100%. And I would also say as well, like when you're starting, sometimes it kind of depends on the product and the business, but I'd really think with your branding and with everything from the start, like really blue sky thinking, like where do you want to end up, right? Like if you want to end up in the US, then in a big, think about that from your brand from the beginning.
That takes a lot of confidence. I mean, it's easy to say it, but actually it takes confidence and discipline out of those.
Yeah. Oh yeah, 100%. Of course, yeah, it takes a ton of confidence, and I think sometimes like I love listening to other people's stories and other entrepreneurs. I find I learn so much from that, and I think a big differentiator of the people who've taken their brands like really, really big, it is often honestly confidence, and self-belief and the belief in your business. Like nobody knows what you're doing or your product like better than you do, and that comes across with like the consumer, the branding agencies, the buyers, like everybody. You have to kind of be an evangelist. And what's to say, like, why can't Good Brew be the next Starbucks? There's a long way to go, but why not? Like, look at Strong Roots or other big Irish brands.
I think scale is a significant thing, and Felix, we were just chatting slightly beforehand. You've proved a concept, you've got sales, and now you're getting orders you're not sure you can handle.
Well, I know I can't handle them at the moment. That's good and it's bad.
Yeah. So be careful what you wish for.
Exactly, but like, is that not a great problem to have?
Yes.
If you create a product yourself, and I think that's also going back to like the experience that I had with like multinational companies. Of course, you're working in that company, and some things are tricky, some things are easy. Like, but it always takes time. So I know that if you're working in a multinational, you can't create a product and try to produce it tomorrow or next week. It will take around 2 to 3 years until it's market ready. We don't need that amount of time. If we want to, we can have a product ready maybe in a couple of months or so, at least to test it and to see like if there's an actual market for it. But I would completely agree, like as you said before, why focus on just like one category or one subcategory if you can like add value to a product in like a category that's maybe a bit further outside. Like but that was also one of the reasons why I didn't want my product to be like the brand name of the product to be focused on jam and spread only. Because in my like case, my vision would be to make things or produce things that are tasty and healthy.
So I was going to ask, are your retailers asking you what's next?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, of course they do.
Yeah.
And if you say, you can't say, I don't know, right?
No.
You might have an idea, and you probably have an idea.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we wouldn't like be here and like try to make things better.
So interesting. You've shaped your brand around a principle rather than a product.
Exactly, yeah.
Did you know that from the beginning or not?
We got there together.
I think it's super important to have an idea where you might go in the future.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you necessarily have the opportunity, or if you have the financial ability or whatever to make it happen.
Yeah.
But at least you've got an idea if you stop where you are and that's it, or if you have ideas in your head and you can incorporate that into your brand already. Like, I didn't want to be focused on spreads only. I want to be focused on, it could be multiple categories, but at least I knew there's a plan, there's my vision. It's only in my head, but why stop earlier than what you think could happen in the future?
I think that speaks to even what you were saying, Dee, about that great belief in what you're doing, belief in yourself, belief in your brand. And I mean, you were going to speak to that as well. Like, I was going to ask, even all of you really to answer the question, have you been a brand believer from the start? Have you really believed in the power of brand to really support your business? I know, Lily, you spoke about at Dublin Food Chain that you really invested from the start. And I know, both Good Brew and More Taste have been part of our repertoire, but, from our perspective, have you really believed in it from the start? Or did it take a little convincing, maybe?
No, we knew, and I think one of the things that is really important when you think about branding, and it was very important for us to this day, is that a lot of people have this very old-fashioned idea that branding is a logo and a look. Yes. And in order for branding to work, there has to be much more than that, not just design. Design is important because it's the first love at first sight, attractive packaging and nice, aesthetic for your branding. But if that's all you are, you're not going to succeed. There has to be substance behind your branding. You have to have a strong story, a belief that in your product. And for me, I think that's substance behind the brand, the story behind the brand. It's way more important than aesthetics.
And I would say, pretty much agree with what you said, but I believed in the product and the idea, and that it is better than what is out there today. But sometimes you try to explain that to people, and they don't get it, right? And people, like in my case with jam, of course, a lot of people make their own jam, and they're very proud to tell you. And if that's the answer that you get after explaining why it's better and different, and the answer is, but I make my own, so that's fine. At some point, you get into these doubts, what am I doing here? Why do I do that? Why do I spend so much time and effort going through all that? And the only reaction is, I don't need that. So sometimes you have that doubt and that slight moment of
I mean, that's where your robust brand, where you've designed your brand to speak the message that you want people to receive, really comes to support your business.
Absolutely. But then you have moments where you get a very different kind of reaction, and you get talking to people that really appreciate the product that you're doing, and they understand and they're happy. Yeah. And that is so motivating when you have a consumer and you get that feedback, and somebody makes the effort buying a product somewhere in an Aldi shop in Ireland, and they write you a letter saying, thank you for producing that kind of product. That's nice. Very motivating, I have to say.
I love that. Jam fan mail. That's great. Yeah, and I think just to add to that as well, that's where I think I definitely understood the importance of branding off the bat, but my appreciation for it has only grown, I think, through the journey for sure. And like you said, beyond the aesthetic, right? But I think something we've been doing increasingly is just really keeping our pretend kind of customer avatar front and center with everything, all the decisions we're making, and not getting it's really good to take opinions off people, but ultimately if they're not the person that we're producing for, it makes it easier, right? That person that says, well, I make my own jam, whatever, that's great, good for them, no disrespect, but that's okay, because that's not your key person. So the tea drinker who doesn't like cold coffee, that's fine, I respect it, but
Felix, just as we conclude, what advice would you give your younger self on the journey you've been on? I know it's not a relatively short journey, but you've been thinking about it for a while. But to people here today who might be thinking about starting a business and brand, what advice would you give them?
Well, there's two advices, I would
Okay.
say. And the one thing is, as you said, it took a while for me to get really my own belief behind it. I knew it's a good product, but I was hesitating. I was hesitating for probably a few years from having the idea until really going for it and taking the opportunity. And that's the first advice. If you see there's an opportunity, just go for it. Like, don't wait. Why wait around until somebody else is doing it? You can do it, so go for it. Don't waste the time. But then base it on actual information. So get the research done first. Know exactly where you need to position what competitors are doing and where you can fill a gap, and then fill the gap and go for it.
Okay, very good. Lily, what advice would you give?
Research, research, research. We all think we have a book in us, but it takes a long to write it. Do your research, and if you believe in the product, you'll find, and what you're producing is good, you'll find a niche in the market for it. But do your research. So many people start businesses and end up closing within the first year. There's a reason for that. So if you do your research, you'll find that the idea, you'll gauge the longevity of the idea. And above all, this day and age when you can...
Okay, so can I ask you, when is too much research?
Well, too much research if you spend years sitting on a great idea and then all of a sudden somebody make it from you. You need to support your idea with some numbers, basically, to make sure that you're going to be able to make money, and also forget about this idea that you're going to become a success overnight. I genuinely think, hand in heart, it took about 3 years for me to draw a salary from my business, and I was very lucky that my long-suffering partner was paying all the bills. It's paid off now, but you need to be careful. And if you're a very creative type of person, you're not short of ideas, but you have to make sure that there's a business head somewhere that's supporting the decisions that you're making. I remember my first year, I wanted shiny logo printed tape for the packaging, and my husband was like, do we really need it? Yes, I need it, I want it. No, do we really need it? And it took me 2 years to be able to afford my shiny, beautiful branded tape. But he was right, I didn't need branded tape from the beginning. So you do need to have someone there.
You had before, when I saw you speak before, you said something about, you can have the wings and you can be the angel with all of these ideas, but you need somebody who's going to be the pair of lead shoes and bring you back down to earth. Which I thought was a really nice idea.
Entrepreneurs tend to fly. We soar high. The drop is very painful. So having a friend, a family member, someone you really trust to be your lead shoes is really important.
Dee, what advice would you give?
Yeah, I think my biggest thing actually kind of echoes what both of you guys have said, which is, I suppose, patience, and to know that it takes time. Everything takes longer than you think it's going to take. Before this business, I came from a very fast-paced world of work where things happen, deadlines were minutes, hours, not days, definitely not months or years. And I found it very frustrating, right? But it does take time, and we're fed this overnight success story for entrepreneurs. Nobody really talks about the the long kind of grueling process, and that applies to everything, like packaging, branding, product, everything. So I would say be patient, stick with it, hold the faith, and just kind of keep going towards your vision.
Very good. Any questions from the audience? Anyone like to ask a question? Sure. I can get the microphone.
Hello. Well, thanks for the presentation. It was really inspiring, I think, for everybody. You all talked about the effort that goes into the message that you put in your business, in your product, and ultimately that is communicated to the consumer through the brand. What were the steps that you took legally to make sure that you actually own that brand, and how Bradley assisted you in that?
Felix, you want to take that one first?
I mean, that is a great question because, like, I was just reading, I think it was this week or last week, about like the importance of having your property and like your branding is the property that you own and how to protect it. So immediately after we developed the actual branding, I went on for the European Intellectual Property Office and like filed the brand and tried to protect it before it was communicated anywhere outside, just to be sure that whatever value is created with it, that it is protected. The great thing about it is there's I think it's called SME fund of the Intellectual Property Office in Spain, I think it is, where it's actually super cost efficient to make that happen. And that was one of the like immediate steps that I took, and probably you guys have done as well.
Yeah, I would say, Felix, you're really, really smart, and you'd be surprised how many people do not do that and how many horror stories I've heard. We were a little bit slower off the mark than you were with doing that, but we also use that SME fund. It is great, and like it is so important. Ours is a little bit more tricky because in the UK in particular, like Brew, it's like a descriptor. But anyway, we're past that process now, but yeah, I've heard some really big stories, but like you said, it's cost effective and it's less daunting than it seems. You don't really need a lawyer, you don't need all that, so yeah.
We're in the process of it because we were one of those agents that didn't do it at the beginning, and we had a terrible thing 2 years ago with another company using same font, same word. My business is called Picado Mexican, and they were promoting stuff on Instagram, and they were basically using my logo. So we had to get, we had to basically in getting it done. So yeah,
I think I just to add to that as well, I heard of an instance, really I'd never even thought about this, how important it is to go to a proper brand designer. Now with all of these programs that exist out there like Canva and different things, I've heard of people having their logos designed, paying money for it, and then it turns out they can't even protect that because it's using elements from like a third party. So you just have to be so careful, like right off the bat.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Okay, well, before we conclude, just some takeaways. I think this is not for the faint-hearted, and I think I don't mean that in a critical way. I just think you need to recognize you're going to feel obstacles along the way, but believe, self-belief. You all got very strong self-belief, and you express it all very differently, which I think is very interesting. And I'd never thought about design as love at first sight until today. So thank you for that. I've been in this game 30 years, and I'm now going to change my title to a love at first sight consultant. A love consultant. Guys, thank you all very much for attending. Appreciate your time for being here. And can I thank Lily, Dee, and Felix on your behalf.